Well, welcome everyone. We've got another study here for you tonight. We're going to be looking more into the Lilith theory, a theory that I wanted to bring to the public sphere simply because we're seeing Lilith being venerated in our modern society and today. In fact, in New York City, I think I showed this picture in one of my videos. They are literally naming her by name and venerating her. And people are following her. Satanism is on the rise. So I wanted to put these videos together in order to warn people about this situation. So I'm going to continue on here. I'll be looking up these scriptures and I'll just be reading along here. And really this series of videos is designed for people who perhaps just like to listen. But we've had people come in for videos as well. You'll have to excuse me. I got a little bit of a bee in my throat, but I'm going to do the best I can tonight. Okay, so we left off last time on Lilith and the Zohar. Okay, so the most important source of information on the Jewish Lilith is the Zohar. The Zohar is essentially a Kabbalistic midrash, which is a collection of commentaries on the Torah, that being Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. The Zohar is the most important work of Kabbalah, is largely defines Kabbalistic works. The Zohar consists of 22 volumes penned by Rabbi Moses de Leon around 1200 CE or AD in Spain. However long before Moses codified the Zohar on that date, many of its midrashes doubtlessly had a long oral tradition. It has been surmised that the roots of its oral tradition may extend all the way back to Rabbi Simeon Bar Yochai in the early Talmudic period. That would be 70 AD. Isn't that interesting? 70 AD. Apparently this was contemporary, a rabbi that was contemporaneous with the destruction of Jerusalem and the war of the Jews that Flavius Josephus talks about. Welcome, Vicky, welcome. Lilith plays a surprisingly large role in the Zohar and thus in Kabbalah. She's mentioned by name in 27 separate passages and by unnamed reference in a further 29, for a total of 56 references. Very interesting. The Zohar supports all the fundamental elements of Lilith's legend. It holds that she was created at the same time as Adam from the dust of the earth. But whereas Adam was animated by the perfect light of Yahweh, Lilith was animated with the defective light of Samael, also known as Lucifer. Now, he interprets Samael to be Lucifer. But if you look at other sources, Samael was probably one of the angels, the watchers that came down to Mount Hermon. Now, there's no indication that that Lucifer was among that bunch. That's supposition on his part. Furthermore, the Zohar states that when Adam's body was cremated, 1,000 defiled spirits tried to preemptively enter and animate his body, but Yahweh's spirit descended, drove them away. Yahweh's spirit then entered and animated the man. Apparently, the defiled spirits did succeed in preemptively animating Lilith, for the Zohar holds that she was animated to life before Yahweh descended and Adam was completed. Now, this is all Jewish mythology. I really don't put a lot of stock in this, but the things that do correlate with what Scripture seems to suggest, it's just worth knowing. The Zohar relates Lilith as an unsuitable helpmate for Adam and fled from him. Lilith desired to mate with angels. She was also the serpent who tempted Eve. Remember, actually the story is quite, what's the term? It's kind of risque about how this came about and how Lilith got mad at Adam. It actually has to do with, it goes even as detailed as a sexual position that Lilith apparently didn't like. Which basically she didn't want missionary position, essentially. This of course upset Adam, and they had a fight about it, and she flew off and left him. The Zohar also confirms that Lilith is the slayer of children and that her spirit is the slain spirit of the bitter water trial. Finally, the Zohar teaches that Lilith was androgynous with both male and female aspects, just as Adam. All right, so Lilith's origins, according to the Zohar. Perhaps the most important discussion on Lilith's origins in the Zohar comes from Zohar 119b. This is based on Genesis passages. These passages are listed below. They explain that Lilith's body was created just like Adam's from the dust of the earth. However, her body came to host the defective animating spark of life that was Samael's, whereas Adam's body came to host the animating spark of Yahweh's perfect light. The passages also link Lilith to curses and death of children. You ever wondered why the lesbians are out there at their Lilith fest? Well, lesbians can't have children unless they use some kind of scientific insemination, which in itself is an abomination. But they are vehemently opposed to any restrictions on abortion. In fact, they even believe that you can kill a baby. Many of them, the more radicals, can believe you can kill a baby after birth if the doctor and the mother decides. So really, we are, as a nation, we're descending into child sacrifice like Moloch. It's worship of Moloch all over again. The passages begin by discussing how and when Yahweh created lights in the expanse of the heavens on creation day 4. This was an event of cursing that resulted in defective light entering creation. The Zohar explains this notion by pointing that Genesis uses a defective spelling of me'orot, which means lights. A missing of in me'orot lets it to be understood as me'irot, which means to curse. Therefore, the created lights are thought to hold a cursing nature. The Zohar teaches that this cursing light is the defective light of Samael. Now, think about this. There could be a reason for why the rabbis ascribed Samael as synonymous with Lucifer, because Lucifer is known as the light bearer. Lucifer is, the New Testament describes Lucifer as he's an angel of light, but he's masquerading. He's masquerading as an angel, but he is really a demon. He's a devil. All right, so this is the Zohar. And Elohim, then let there be me'orot, lights in the expanse of heaven. Me'orot is spelled deficiently as me'orot, meaning to curse. Thus, diphtheria was created for children after the radiance of primordial light was treasured away. A shell was created for the kernel of light. Now, this is where we get the idea of, well, I think this might be touching on, see, after the radiance of primordial light was treasured away, a shell was created for the kernel of light. That shell expanded, generating another shell. Emerging, she ascended and descended, arriving at the small faces. She desired to cling to them, be portrayed in them, and never depart. The Blessed Holy One separated her form there, bringing her down below when he created Adam, so that this would be perfected in his room. Okay, so this must be talking about, this kernel light must be talking about this defective light it's talking about. As soon as she saw Eve cling to the side of Adam, beauty above, as soon as she saw the complete image, she flew away, desiring as before to cleave to the small faces. And I'm not exactly sure what the small faces mean here in the Zohar. These guardians of the gates on high did not allow her. The Blessed One rebuked her and cast her to the bottom of the sea. Now, that's interesting there, where they get the idea of Lilith being in the sea, but it also could mean the sea of sand, the sea of wilderness. Might not necessarily mean water, as we learned earlier. She dwelt there until Adam and his wife sinned. Then the Blessed One plucked her from there, and she rules over all those children, small faces of humanity, who deserve to be punished for the sins of their father. Isn't that interesting? They ascribe Lilith as the demon which is responsible for the curses being under the third and fourth generation, as Torah talks about. Interesting. She flies off, roaming through the world, approaching the earthly Garden of Eden. She sees cherubs guarding the gates of garden. She dwells there by that flaming sword. That's mentioned. That flaming sword, remember, was there to prevent Adam and Eve from re-entering the Garden of Eden after they fell. For she emerged from the side of the flame. As the flame revolves, she flees and roams the world, finding children who deserve to be punished. She toys with them and kills them. This happens in the waning of the moon, whose light diminishes. This is me'erot, deficient. Now, it's interesting. This actually could be a reference to this timing here. This happens in the waning of the moon. I'll bet you that that has high significance in witchcraft. I bet you that they ascribe great significance to that. After noting how Samael's defective light entered creation on day 4, the passages go on to describe its ramifications on the creation of Lilith and Adam on day 6. It notes that on day 6, Yahweh created a shell or klipa to house Yahweh's primordial pure light. Now, it could be, when it talks about the shell, there are some texts that seem to indicate that, see, I'm not sure whether it's in reference to like the body that is like a resurrected body, it was a spiritual body, or is it talking about literal like skin on flesh? Was the shell, see, because angels themselves who are unfallen, who interact with mankind, they have a shell, they have a body, but it's a higher level body. It's a spiritual body. It could be, in essence, it could be of light. It could be a light body. It might not be of earthly. That's Paul seems to indicate that. He says earthly, unspiritual. That's in reference to Adam and the fall, and flesh is earthly, unspiritual. See, and that's what Paul talks about in all his letters, where he's wrestling constantly with that. Okay, so it notes that on day 6, Yahweh created a shell or klipa to house Yahweh's primordial pure light. This shell was Adam's body. Okay, that's what I thought they were talking about. This interpretation is sure because Zohar 120a states that klipa refers to the body and the radiant spark within refers to its spirit. So Zohar 128, in this image, the human being exists in this world with an inner part and an outer klipa. That would be the body, which corresponds to a spirit and a body. After Adam's klipa or body was created, now this could be before the fall. This klipa could have to do before the fall. I'm not sure how they would look at that, but I'm just surmising here. The passage 98 notes that Adam's shell expanded and Lilith's shell emerged from it. Lilith's shell did not house Yahweh's pure light. This is why her creation is mentioned in the context of the defective light, which entered creation. Now, you know what? Now, a lot of this could be an explanation as to explain what happened with the whole thing. If the Lilith theory is correct, it could simply, the Jews simply had to come up with a way to how this whole situation was defective until Eve came on the scene, possibly. Okay, so it's quite clear that Lilith's shell contained the defective light. He says, let there be lights, me'erot, everything derives from it. Interesting. He's connecting that to Genesis, where it says, let there be light. It also includes the creation of Lilith in the world. Wow. So he's connecting that to Genesis, where Yahweh says, let there be light. And he's saying that it's not so much physical light as in like the sun gives light to the earth. It could be the light of the sparks of spirits and so on. Well, how Lilith, a lot of interesting concept here. How Lilith came to be animated with a defective light is also explained in Safra. Looks like Detsniuta. It states that both evil and good creatures were made on creation day 5 and 6 because the defective light of Samael intermixed with the perfect light of Yahweh. The light of one spread into the other. So this is very much an Essene concept too, because when we read the Essene in the liturgy, it talks about spirits of light and spirits of darkness. And it gives us character traits of spirits of light, you know, that they look at, they move toward justice, mercy, goodness, kindness. whereas the spirits of darkness are all self-centered, and they go about working destruction. Passage 98 above notes that when the defective light entered creation, the curse of diphtheria for children was created. This again is in reference to Lilith. The Zohar closely links diphtheria to Lilith. Zohar 2:26-4b states that Lilith strikes children with this disease. Zohar 2:67b relates that Lilith and diphtheria are two distinct but kindred spirits. So literally they ascribe diphtheria as a demon. Now, it's interesting because if you go into Pentecostal churches, a lot of their, what they do is Pentecostal churches have an interest. Oh, what happened here? Good grief. My notebook. Okay. Pentecostal churches have a, it's interesting because they ascribe every disease and every negative thing, even like they ascribe a demon that's over drug addiction, that's over, spousal abuse, that's over, there's always a demon behind it. Well, there is a certain truth to that. There's a certain truth to that because demons are what motivate mankind to do what's evil. So the Zohar may have selected the disease of diphtheria, if I can get rid of this, as emblematic of Lilith because of its unusual traits. Diphtheria is an upper respiratory illness caused by bacteria. Its symptoms include a swollen throat and a bull neck, and an adherent membrane that grows on the tonsils, pharynx, and our nasal cavity. This membrane is a leathery sheath-like skin. Victims die of suffocation when the leathery membrane growths close their air passages. Man, wouldn't that be a horrible disease? Diphtheria is very contagious, although in modern times it has been eradicated through widespread vaccination. In the past, it was particularly deadly disease to children, with some outbreaks killing 80% of children under the age of 10 in affected regions. Wow. The Zohar may have attributed this disease to Lilith because of its deadliness and eerie characteristics. The sight of a leathery skin growth slowly closing the air passages of its victims must have been quite horrifying. The swelling of the neck and leathery skin growth may have made it appear as though a terrible physical transformation was overwhelming the victim, analogous to the horrible swelling and rotting skin of the soda during the trial. That's exactly what I was thinking about. There might be a connection there. Passage 98 above relates that after Lilith was created, she ascended and attempted to mate with the small faces. Now, the small faces might be these other spirits, but I'm not quite sure what they're getting at, whether they are these spirits that are these watchers. Now that's a little questionable there. I'm not sure. This is an apparent reference to angels who are likened to children in appearance. Interesting. You ever wondered where the Catholic Church got their idea of the, like angels sometimes are pictured as babies, and even Cupid has basis in the idea of an angelic being that has he's got this bow, and the idea of that bow is that it goes into the heart of something and it makes them think something. Well, that's what angels are thought to do, to guide mankind. Okay, this is an apparent reference to angels who are like, okay, so God then separated her from there when Adam's creation was finished. However, when Lilith saw Eve attached to Adam's side, she fled from him, attempting to have sex with the angels once more. Yahweh then dispatches her to the depths of the sea, and she dwelt there until Adam and his wife sinned. Interesting. According to passage 100. Now, so then where does it, what I'd like to know is where does it come in where the serpent is thought of as Lilith? Because if that's true, then, well, I guess it does say until they sinned. I guess until they sinned. According to passage 100, when Eve sinned and turning aside from Adam, Yahweh set free the spirit of Lilith in the world to unleash her curses upon sinners. She rules over all infants who deserve to be punished because of the sins of their fathers. Wow, that's a powerful thing there, isn't it? Even from a standpoint of spiritual warfare, Children should be anointed, they should be blessed, they should be dedicated. In fact, this is why in Judaism it is so important that every Shabbat, a lot of the Shabbat assemblies I've gone to, they will have the boys get up on one side, the girls set up on another, and they will bless them. All of that is based upon this ideology of the spirits are out to get our kids, essentially. At that time, a cloud descended and scattered the spirit. Shortly thereafter, Adam was animated by Jehovah's breath or Yahweh's breath. The rebuked spirits were those of Lucifer and his angels. So come and see in a hole by the great supernova abyss, there is a certain female, a spirit above all spirits. We have explained that its name is Lilith. She was first with Adam when Adam was created and his body perfected. 1,000 spirits came on the body from the left side. This one wanted to enter it, and that one wanted to enter it, but they could not. The Holy One, blessed be he, scolded them. Thus Adam lay down spiritless, green in appearance, with all those spirits around him. Notice they had this green in appearance. Isn't that something? At that time, a cloud descended and pushed aside all the spirits which surrounded Adam. Wouldn't that be a kick in the pants if it turns out that Adam was green in appearance? That would get rid of all the racial baloney, wouldn't it? So they all claim to be from Adam. All right, we know from Zohar 119b that Lilith was animated first before Adam. From this, we may conclude that although Yahweh did prevent the spirits from entering Adam's body, did not prevent them from entering Lilith's. They entered her and animated her after the likeness of Lucifer. Shortly thereafter, Yahweh's cloud descended and scattered the spirits, and Adam in turn was animated by Yahweh's spirit. Combining this with our knowledge of what the Hebrew of Genesis 2 literally says, we would conclude the spirits entered Lilith via the mist which broke through from the ground. Remember that Yeshua said to the Pharisees, I am from above and you are from below. And remember how he ascribed the Pharisees as, why are you going about trying to kill me? Your father was a murderer from the beginning. Notice that idea of spirits from below and spirits from above, okay? Spirits from below, reference to demons. Spirits from above, any kind of interaction from above would be angels. Indeed, the 17th century Kabbalist Yalkut Reubeni teaches in his commentary on the Zohar that Lilith was created from impure sediments, mud, and scum. That could be fanciful, I don't know. In the beginning, the Holy One, blessed be he, created Eve. Oh, interesting. The first Eve, Lilith. This is talking about Lilith here. Eve, it means Hava, means mother of the living. So she was meant to be the mother of the living, if indeed this theory is correct, to where she would, submit herself to Adam, where she would be godly and she would do what was right, but turns out, according to the theory, that she wasn't. Okay, and she was a harmful spirit, and the Holy One, blessed be he, took her away from Adam and gave him another in her stead. Interesting. All right, so let me see if we have any comments or anything. Anything on Facebook? Sometimes people on Facebook make comments. Nope. Very interesting material here. A little heady. It's a little bit heady, but interesting nonetheless. Okay, so 5.2, Lilith as a serpent in the Zohar. The Zohar also teaches that Lilith is the serpent who deceived Eve. Zohar 148a to 148b, Vayetz, passage 23, calls Lilith a snake. Now it's Nakash in Hebrew, a snake. And the female of Samael, it also calls her a wife of harlotry. The passage speaks of the serpent Lilith's intrinsically fused nature with Samael. She and Samael are one, just as Adam and Eve were one before Eve was taken from him. A footnote to the passage further explains Samael is like the soul and Lilith like the body. Interesting, that interesting. So, you know what? I had this idea in my earlier exploration of this subject that Samael was like this male demon, and Lilith was like, had the body. But literally what the Zohar seems to indicate is that she was possessed by Samael. Like demon possession. Deeds are wrought by Lilith with the power of Samael. This is true because Samael is the animating spirit of Lilith. This is in keeping with the notion that the defective light of Lilith's klipa in Zohar 119b is the spirit of Samael. Okay. So this is in the Zohar. A deep mystery is found in the strength of Yitzhak's light and from the dregs of wine. One shape emerged from both, made of male and female, good and evil as one. This male, called Samael, and his female is always included with him. Just as on the side of holiness, there are male and female, so on the other side, there are male and female, including one with the other. In other words, there's good people and there's evil people, whether they're male or female. The female of Samael is called snake. Interesting, Nachash in Hebrew. A wife of harlotry, the end of all flesh, the end of days. Two evil spirits are attached to one another. The male spirit is fine, and the female spirit spreads out down several ways and is attached to the male spirit. Wow. Another important passage comes from the Zohar. This is another passage, Pekudai. Clearly links the serpent to Lilith. It also, once again, emphasizes the strange union between Samael and Lilith. In the passage of serpent is called a seductive woman, full of flattery and deception. The serpent practices the art of seduction and instigates rebellions in the world. Note that the passage attributes these powers to the serpent itself and not from Samael, who rides her. Thus, the serpent's power to speak, to subtly seduce, and to deceive were innate in her creation. This is what we expect from the Lilith myth. So here's another passage of the Zohar. When Adam was in the Garden of Eden, was occupied in worshiping his master, that would be Yahweh, Samael went down with all the grades in him and was riding on the evil serpent to deviate them. As the serpent underneath was subtle and led astray and seduced people, as it is written, for the lips of a strange woman drip honey, and her mouth is smoother than oil. Isn't that adds light to Proverbs chapter 5, verse 3. Mishlei is Proverbs. Wow, a strange woman. And that could have metaphysical connection to Lilith, who is an ultra deceiver female. He gives power and she practices the art, which is of seduction and instigation in the world. And they cannot rule the one without the other. Wow. And that's something. The Zohar has two passages that have caused many to surmise that it teaches that the serpent had physical intercourse with Eve and that the result was Cain. At first, this idea may seem outlandish. That's probably where the serpent seed comes from. These guys believe in the serpent seed. That's interesting there. Because the serpent is female. However, recall the Zohar teaches that the serpent is androgynous with both male and female aspects. Okay. Let's see here. Although the serpent certainly appears to have had intercourse with Eve based on only the two passages below in isolation, we shall see this is almost certainly not the case. The passage speaks of a spiritual, not physical insemination. Well, that makes sense. That's more agreed upon. That's not. It would not make sense because I think that the serpent seed doctrine is a doctrine of devils. It's an incorrect doctrine. But this in other words, it's like somebody who's very deceptive, and when they speak to you, if you're young in the faith, if you are simple-minded, you can be overcome by their thought process. That's like being inseminated in the spirit. They've inseminated their idea in you, and now you carry that with you throughout your life unless you repent and turn to Yahweh. So that's kind of what happened. Okay, based on only two passages below and ISO, we shall see that this is almost certainly not the case. The passages speak of a spiritual, not physical insemination. It is likely the Zohar purposely makes it teachings on Eve's guilt in this manner confusing, as this uncertainty best follows the mysteries of the bitter water trial, where the guilt of the woman is always in question. Now, have you ever wondered, these demons are extremely sly. In fact, a lot of times in some of the southern churches, they denote Satan as being old Slewfoot. You ever heard that? Satan is old Slewfoot. That means somebody who's very sly, very crafty. They have a way of getting in. You know, if you're young in the faith, if you are naive, if you're given to impression, and you don't have your faith rooted on the foundation of Yah's word, they can easily get in. And so that could be what this is referring to here. Bereshit, a passage 455 states that two individuals had intercourse with Eve. These two individuals commonly assumed to be the spirit and Adam. The passage is then understood to say that from the serpent came evil Cain, and from Adam came Abel. Now, think about this. Think about this. Could Lilith be responsible for, let's say you have a man and a woman in a marriage, and suddenly the woman's heart is turned against her husband? Could Lilith be responsible for that, or any of her subordinate demons? Could it be like an insemination? The woman thinks it's her idea, but it's not her idea. She's been subjecting herself to a demonic motivation. See, you have the case of a righteous woman or a righteous man and a woman who may be susceptible that way, especially if she comes out underneath her husband's headship. She's even more susceptible. And that could have connection to, let's see, the Pauline letter that talks about, women should have a head covering because of the angels. Well, these angels are these demons that it's talking about. Okay, so Bereshit passage 455 states that two individuals had intercourse with Eve. These two individuals are commonly assumed to be the serpent and Adam. The passage is then understood to say that from the serpent came evil Cain, and from Adam came Abel. I reject that. I don't think that's correct. I think that's correct. I don't think that's correct. Okay, so that's Zohar 1. I think they're wrong about that. After this, they gave birth to the first son. He was the son of defilement because two had intercourse with Eve, and she conceived from both and gave birth to two, Cain and Abel. Each resembled his own father, and their spirits were separated, one to the side of impurity and one to the side of holiness. Each was in the appearance of his own aspect. The only way I could see this happening is, or see this explained as, is if the serpent in the mind inseminated Eve, and that got into her spirit, and then that was passed on to one of her sons. So she had physical sex with Adam, her husband, but it's in the spirit. It's already in her spirit. And this, I think, is what they're saying, which is not the serpent seed doctrine. So I think there's a clarification there. Chaye Sarah passage 19 bluntly states that the serpent injected impurities into Eve. This is commonly seen as a reference to semen, but what he's saying here is that it's not physical. She inseminated her demonic thought process into Eve. That's what's going on here. Come and behold, Eve came to the world and clung to the serpent. He injected impurities into her. And this could be what Paul speaks of in the gospel, in the epistles, when he says, for Adam was not deceived first, the woman was being deceived, found in transgression. So that's probably where that comes from. The common understanding of these two passages that the serpent had intercourse with Eve is probably wrong. There are other passages of the Zohar that conflict with the notion that the serpent had physical intercourse with Eve. Bereshit B, passages 349 to 350 state that neither Abel nor Cain were born in the image of Adam. They were both produced by attachment to the serpent and Samael. Cain was born, in other words, in a spiritual sense, what he's saying. Cain was born in the image of defilement. Well, see, remember that This could go back to original sin. It could, even the Protestant and the Catholic Church has the idea of original sin, that when a child is born, they are born, remember, they're in a fallen state. Adam and Eve had sex. They had two sons, Cain and Abel. They were already fallen from perfection. They were fallen from perfection. And so that fallen nature passed into those boys. Abel was over to overcome it. Cain succumbed to it. That's the difference. Okay, so Cain was born in the image of defilement. Abel was born in the image of holiness. It is inconceivable that the serpent could be physically responsible for Abel's conception in holiness. That's right. So the serpent seed doctrine is a lie. It's incorrect. Therefore, the Zohar must be indicating that Cain and Abel were produced through spiritual and mystical inseminations. These inseminations mirror those of the bitter water trial, and they are caused by the spirits of Yahweh and the serpent. Now, notice this also brings up another thing where in the Gospels, notice that Yeshua is the Pharisees, because Yeshua is condemning the Pharisees. Remember how they said to him, it was a horrible slur on our master. They said, we be not born in fornication. They were connecting to this concept. We be not born of fornication. In other words, they were saying you were born. They were saying to the master himself, you were born in fornication, which is a lie, a devilish lie, because remember, Mary had not stepped out on her husband. It says the spirit of Yah overcame her, and a spiritual insemination came into her by angelic, godly insemination came into her. And then that is how Messiah, it was the Immaculate Conception. Even the Catholics have a concept of this. Okay, so I hold that the mystical inseminations derived from the bitter water judgment which Eve underwent. Cain is the seed of adultery in the image of the serpent Lilith. It bruised the heel of the promised seed Abel. Well, yeah, Cain's descendants have always been at odds with Abel, but that doesn't mean that they are literally physically Nephilim, okay? However, unto the innocent woman modeled in Eve, replacement seed is granted. This seed is Seth, who Genesis says were replacement for Abel, whom Cain slew. So Cain killed Abel. All right, so here's a passage in the Zohar. Rabbi Yehuda continued saying, and he begot Seth in his own likeness, after his own image. This indicates that his other sons, Cain and Abel, were not after his likeness, but Seth was in his own likeness and after his image, both physically and spiritually. As Rabbi Shimon said in the name of Rabbi Yibasaba, the elder, Adam's other sons had been produced in defilement through attachment to the serpent and its rider, who was Samael. Hence, they bore no resemblance to Adam, although I think he's wrong about Abel. Even though Abel, unlike Cain, was from the side of purity and not the serpent. Well, okay, maybe he clarifies it there. Neither had the form or the image of Adam. I think that's wrong. I think they both had the image and form of Adam because at this point they were in the fallen state. They were in a fallen state. And Adam was in a fallen state, Eve was in a fallen state, and their two sons were in a fallen state. The simple fact is that what am I trying to get at here? I wish they'd stop calling me these telemarketers. I lost my train of thought. The simple fact is that Cain succumbed to the evil nature, and Abel didn't, as I said before. Okay, but it's not written that Adam begat Cain. This is not written of Abel either. Instead, it is written as she further gave birth to his brother Abel. And here lies the concealed truth that even Abel was not born in the image of Adam, but of Seth, it is written, and he begot in his own likeness after his image. Well, you know what? If Cain had not killed Abel, Abel would have remained righteous, and he would have been, he would have been found in the line of Messiah. I believe that's the case. All right, that the above passages speak of spiritual insemination is supported by Bereshit. That's Genesis, passage 331. It states that Adam physically begot both Cain and Abel. Okay, so that destroys the serpent seed doctrine right there. And so the Jews have that right, I think. Cain was fathered before Adam repented and was thus born of defilement. Abel was fathered after Adam had repented and was thus born of purity. It is probable that Eve mystically conceived the spirits of both Cain and Abel at the time of her cursing before Yahweh. This is because many scholars believe Cain and Abel to be twin brothers. This stems from the fact that the Bible states that Adam knew his wife only once, and yet both brothers were the result. Thus, both may have been spiritually conceived, or at least received their images. At the same time, during Eve's cursing before Yahweh, the actual physical conception may have played out more naturally, with Adam later having intercourse with Eve and mystically giving rise to two seeds, not in his image. Interesting. So this is Zohar 1. Adam clove to the unclean spirit, which is the serpent, and his wife clung to it first and took and received. In other words, remember, Adam fell too. He gave in to whatever that spiritual insemination was, which is typified in the Bible as the fruit. He ate the fruit, the forbidden fruit. And received defilement. He begot a son. That son was the son of the impure spirit. Thus, there were two sons, one from the unclean spirit, Cain, and the other one was born after Adam had repented. That's Abel. Hence, one was born of the side of purity and one of the side of impurity. Now, all of this connects to the curses of the father are passed on to the third and fourth generation. That's where all of that comes from in here. I held that the Zohar did not teach that the serpent had physical intercourse with Eve. However, it does speak of a spiritual insemination. The physicality of the act is merely an impression given from the weighty and difficult mysticism of the topic. This difficulty is best resolved by what the Zohar teaches on the bitter water trial. It teaches that the serpent spirit is the fundamental cursing agent in the trial. Remember, I think we went over the soda trial. That's in the book of Numbers. And that when it ejects its venom in the belly of the woman, it begins the curses. The serpent spirit is one of two animating spirits in the trial. Thus, when Bereshit A, passage 455, states that the two had intercourse with Eve, it refers to the two animating spirits, that of Yahweh and of Samael. It does not refer to Eve's physical mating with the serpent and with Adam. So that's that. I'm glad he's taking this position, because if you even understand this theory to be correct, then this would have to be the way it is, because the serpent seed doctrine is clearly incorrect. Remember that Hitler, Adolf Hitler, believed the serpent seed doctrine. That's how he was able to ascribe the Jews as animals, as lower creatures, as worthy of being obliterated, worthy of being killed wholesale, and that's what led to the Holocaust. Serpent seed doctrine is a very dangerous doctrine. When Kaisera passage 19 states that the serpent injected defilement into Eve, it refers to the curses that resulted from Eve's sin. This is all seen in what the Zohar has to say about the serpent's role in the bitter water trial. Okay. Any comments? We're getting down close to our time here. We got a little bit of time for more reading, but I wanted to open up for comments. If there's any comments, any thoughts? If there's no thoughts, I'll continue on. All right. All right, so let's take a look at this here, 5.3, Lilith's role in the bitter water trial according to the Zohar. The Zohar also discussed at length the fascinating role that Lilith plays in the bitter water trial of the soda. As usual, the Zohar's language is highly cryptic, but a careful reading reveals that the Zohar teaches that Lilith's spirit is the fundamental cursing agent in the trial. It also supports every major mystical aspect of the trial taught in the book, The Bitter Water Code. So there's another one of these books that this guy has. The relevant, get rid of that. The relevant passages of the Zohar come in chapter 3 of Mishpatim. I think Mishpatim is Judges. That's the book of Judges, I think. Was that correct? We've got Bereshit. We see Bereshit. let's see, Bereshit. I know I got Vayikra, Devarim. Okay, so Bereshit, Bamidbar, Bereshit, Bamidbar. What's the third one? Vayikra. I can't remember those first 5 books of the Bible in Hebrew. But I think this is talking about Mishpatim means judgment. In this enigmatic chapter, Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Kaya fumble with a number of different riddles posed to them by a mysterious old merchant. The merchant warns the rabbis that there are matters of wisdom hidden in every subject of the Torah, all of which require interpretation. In addressing one riddle, he says that it is important to know how to be careful when attracting a soul into the body of a conceived child during intercourse. He then begins discussing the mysteries of the bitter water trial. His topic is apparently not entirely clear to the rabbis initially. Does not become clear until the old man mentions the belly of the soda in passage 323. Okay, so this is Zohar. What is the sound of the woman which the sound of the snake can join with, as do a male and female dog? He answers, the serpent voice cannot cling to any voice of a woman, but there are 2 kinds of women with whom he can unite. One is a woman who does not observe the days of her menstrual impurity and the day of cleansing. Wow, interesting that it connects it to the laws of Niddah. And isn't it something that if a man has sex with a woman when she's in a period, the Bible says they are to be cut off from Israel. Wow. And purifies by immersion a day too early, or a woman who delays the marital visits to spite her husband. Wow. Unless her husband does not mind or does not care about it. Okay, so that when you are defrauding, that Paul mentions that. When these 2 women as one hastens, one also tarries with the voice of the serpent until the voice is merged, just as she delays her marital visit to distress her husband in postponing the performance of a precept. So the voice of the serpent advances to merge with the voice of the woman. These 2 women with whom the sound of the serpent is caught up are comparable to the union of the male and the female dog. Uncleanness follows uncleanness. A species seeks out its own. One may ask why it should bother us if one voice is caught up with another or not. He answers, woe to the people in the world perish unknowingly. If the woman's voice mingles and joins with the voice of the serpent, when sinful, evil Lilith comes out of her lair, when she meets these 2 voices, the voice of the serpent and the voice of the woman Lilith is heated by them and they by her. Thus she conceives and a spirit is formed and they follow it until the spirit invades the intestines of that woman. It could be talking about this could be where the Jews get the idea of being born steeped in sin. If the union is not pure, so he's talking about 2 different kinds of situations. This is a woman who is voracious for sex and she wants her husband to join with her even during her menstrual impurity, which Torah says is a serious sin. She could be cut off from Israel for such. But also a woman who defrauds her husband is listening to the serpent, and she could be the progeny of such then can be impure. So that's what they're saying here. The sinful Lilith comes and visits the spirit of his child that is born, which came about from this awful merger with the sound of the serpent that rattles inside her. This spirit plays with the child until evil Lilith arrives, just as a woman might visit another woman's child and prattle with it until its mother arrives. Many times the spirit, a messenger of the evil Lilith, in other words, she had messengers, may kill it. The verse writes, and on one side of their oppressors, there was power. Interesting. Ecclesiastes 4:1, he connects it to that. The explanation of the verse is not as you suggest, but its explanation is the strength of that spirit. And so twice is written in the verse, but they had no comforter from the wicked Lilith and from that spirit. He said to himself, old man, now you have friends. You speak like one who never saw war wagers. They are at peace with you. Now I will not remove from me weapons of war in order to make my name remembered. The sin that lies in wait and stands by the door like a dog. Now I think Proverbs says that, doesn't it? That's interesting. When the last sound is emitted, when the woman about to give birth cries just before birth, he skips from the door and goes after the woman. Why? Because the Holy One, blessed be he, sends a key to open the womb, and when the voice flies forth, the key comes. The serpent follows the voice that is emitted and goes to the hill of the stomach. It bites that place, opens the womb, and knocks there till such time that she is cleansed from the filth of the bite of that evil serpent. So this actually is a way of explaining the menstrual period and the days of impurity of a woman that the Torah talks about. And notice that you ever wondered why there's a difference between so many days if a woman has a man child, and there's like way more days if she has a daughter? This goes into that whole issue of why that's occurring like that. Isn't that something? The Holy One, blessed be he, brings about situations and performs fitting actions. Okay, all this fitting actions which cleanse the filth comes because the belly was rejected. It is sure that the serpent was shunted from that belly and has no part in it. So that would be a righteous situation. Also, he has shunted from the belly below of other women in the world. So even though he can distress them, he has no right to dominate them. Which belly does he have authority to dominate? It is the belly of the Sota, which is a married woman suspected of adultery, about whom it is written, and her belly will swell. This would be the guilty one, remember? With this belly, he acts with vengeance, as this belly is his to do with what he wishes, and the Holy One, blessed be he, allowed him this in order that he not be totally shunted. My friends, listen. I have not seen you or spoken to you. All things are full of weariness. Let no one can speak. Even the Torah words are wearisome. Wow. A lot of interesting stuff from the book of Ecclesiastes. Kohelet is Ecclesiastes. Okay, so the old man says it is possible for the voice of the serpent to join with the voice of the woman. That's kind of like, someone who is, people that do evil things, they don't even realize there's a demon planting those thoughts in them. There's a demon planting those thoughts in them. They think it's their mind. They think it's their spirit. It's not. It's a demon moving the children of men who are wicked and are unredeemed. If they don't have the blood of Yeshua to cover them, if they are not proactively moving in his presence, then they are being moved by demons, and they think it's their own mind, their own thing. But this is the reality is that you're either moved and motivated by the spirit of righteousness or the spirit of wickedness. Just like the Essenes talked about, you're motivated by the spirit of light or the spirit of darkness. See. All right, so the old man says it's possible for the voice of the serpent to join the voice of the woman and thereby conceive evil seed. In passage 3:17, the rabbis ask the old man, what is the sound of the woman that allows this to happen? The old man responds, there are two types of women with whose voice the serpent's voice can cling. The first is the woman who is impure at the time of her intercourse, but she has not cleansed herself from menstrual purity. You ever wonder why the Jews have such elaborate ways of going about purifying themselves? Women purifying themselves after they have a baby. And the laws of Niddah. Yeah, that's right, Vicki. And the second is the woman who has created anxiety in her husband because she has delayed in providing her marital visits to him. Remember, it's interesting that the Apostle Paul strictly condemned that. These two women mirror the two types of women who undergo the bitter water trial. The first woman, who is defiled by the blood of her impurity, mirrors the guilty Sota, who was defiled by her adultery. The second woman, who causes her husband anxiety, corresponds to the innocent woman of the bitter water trial. Both have done nothing wrong except taking actions that provoked anxiousness or jealousy in their husbands. Interesting. According to the old man's cryptic response, we see that both the guilty Sota and the innocent woman of the bitter water trial conceive supernatural seeds due to the spirit of Lilith. This is in keeping with the results of the Bitter Waters Code. That's another book. The voice of the serpent also joins unto this innocent woman because she undergoes the trial's rigors and curses, just as does the guilty woman. Moreover, as the old man explains in passage 3:18, this woman is probably not entirely innocent, for she has probably done something that has provoked her husband jealousy. So he's going back to the book of Numbers where it talks about a husband, thinks his wife has stepped out on him. And so he goes to the priest and he says, hey, I think she stepped out on me. Something feels alien in our relationship. Now he could be right, and she could have stepped out on him because, it's like this, when a man and woman are joined in the spirit through the union of sexual intercourse, if one departs from that, there is an intrinsic feeling into them. There's an intrinsic feeling. There's a suspicion. And I think women understand this as well as men, if you're discerning. Okay, in passage 319, the rabbis asked the old man who it should matter if the voice of the serpent is caught up with the voice of the woman. The old man then responds that when the voice of the serpent mingles with the voice of the woman, then when the evil and sinful Lilith comes out of her lair, she is heated by these voices, and Lilith conceives seed. Note that there are two spirits of Lilith mentioned here, sinful Lilith and evil Lilith. Interesting. This is in the Zohar. This becomes clear in the subsequent passages. In the bitter water trial, I hold that these two spirits correspond to the same spirit that has an opportunity to enter the woman upon each of her two drinkings of the bitter waters. Sinful Lilith corresponds to the first drinking. Both the innocent woman and the defiled Sota drink of her. Well, that's because Eve and the children of Eve we're all children of Adam and Eve. That's because we were born into a fallen world. We have an evil nature. We're born into that. So that's what that first drink is talking about. Evil Lilith corresponds to the second drinking. This is the deadly Lilith, and only the defiled Sota drinks her. That is representative of a woman who is in sin and refuses to repent of it, refuses to acknowledge it. Sinful nature. There, Vicky. The innocent woman's second drinking is of cleansed waters. In other words, it justifies her rather than condemns her. The cleansed waters. That's in the bitter water trial in the book of Numbers. The old priest continues in passages 319. He states that after Lilith conceives her seed, she follows his spirit into the intestine of the woman. In passage 320, the old man states the sinful Lilith shows up first and plays with the spirit of the child. However, she is not the permanent mother of the child. Evil Lilith, when and if she arrives, is the permanent mother. Interesting. So the old man says that the sinful Lilith is but a messenger of the evil Lilith to come. The old man's response is based on the bitter water trial. The old man's sinful Lilith is considered a temporary messenger because of her cursing is that of the first waters drank in the bitter water trial. This cursing is taken away from the woman of the trial when her minka barley offering is taken to the altar. However, if the defiled woman drinks a second time, when evil Lilith comes in the waters, and the woman's cursing shall not depart. That would be the one who really is an adulterous woman, who denied it. Lilith shall stay and slay the woman in her seed. So that's where it says in the book of Numbers that her thigh shall swell. And, most of the commentaries say she dies. And even in the Talmud, it says that she died instantly. She died very quickly. All right, so the old man explains these mysteries to the rabbis by providing yet another riddle in the past 320. He states the sinful Lilith often slays the seed. She follows into the intestines of the woman, but not always. All right, so what I'm going to do is stop here because I don't want to. We'll continue on with this later. It's 7:58. But I hope you guys got something out of this. It's a very interesting subject. And I tell you what, it really does a lot for me in terms of solidifying some scriptural principles. Now, remember that the Lilith understanding is one of 2 or 3 possible explanations for things that went on in the book of Genesis. But it's interesting that she is mentioned by name, in the book of Isaiah, chapter 28, and that's in the Hebrew. All right, so everyone, you guys have a great night. Yah bless you, and hopefully we'll show up Brother Sean's here, those who desire to do so.